Okay, starting the second share on Hilchas Gitin inside. What was learned last week, and according to the schedule, which is Siman Kuf Chaf Sa'if Gimel. Continue with Siman Kuf Chaf, which is the Yesodus. Again, the Yesodus of Hilchas Gitin. A lot of the halachas are based upon the Siman, and we'll go through the halacha, then we go through practically how things are done today. Sa'if Gimel. The Tur begins by saying that you write a get to the husband, even if his wife is not there with him. V'hu sheyihiyu makirim v'yoidim ha'edim v'hasoifer shezehu ploini v'ishtei ploinis. As long as the edim and the soifer recognize and know that this is him and that is her, this is his wife. This is based on the Gemara Maseches Baba Basra. The Mishnah over there says that koisvim get leish, you write a get for a man even if his wife is not there, and you write a shoiver, the receipt, for the wife even if her husband is not there, or bilvat sheyehei makiron, as long as they are recognized. What is this hakare, that this makirim that you have to do? The Gemara right away explains. This is Kuf Samach Zayin, end of Amud Aleph, beginning of Amud Beis in Baba Basra, not in Maseches Gitin. Ubelvashi yemakiv shemaish beget v'shemaisha b'shoiver. As long as you recognize the name of the husband when you write a get, and the name of the woman when you write a shoiver. The Gemara doesn't tell you who's supposed to know, who's supposed to do this recognizing. And do you need both of them? The Gemara doesn't tell you right away. Do you need both of them to be known? That means you need to have, when you write a get, to know the husband and the wife, and when you write a shoiver, to know the wife and the husband. And that's what the Gemara right away continues in asking. Shema ish beget in, shema isha loy, shema isha b'shoiver in, shema ish loy. So you only need one and not the other. Obviously, someone could pull off a trick, and if it only knows Shem Ha'ish, he will put somebody else's name or something else over there for Shem Ha'isha, or the woman will put somebody else's name over there for Shem Ha'ish if you only recognize her. So the Gemara then says, Abaya says, no, you need, when it says Shem Ha'ish beget and Shem Ha'isha b'shoiver, it means by a get you have to have this via hakara of the husband and the wife, and by a shoiver it has to be a hakara of the wife and the husband. The Rashbam over there says, what's the makir, what's the recognition? The soifer and the edim have to know, tzrichim sheyakiru shezehu shmoi. They have to know that this is his name, they have to know the name, and by a woman they have to know shezehu shmo, that is her name. The Nemuka Yosef over there points out that this hakara is not only that he has, not that they should recognize them and know them, that they're friendly with them, etc. Rather, that they should know what their names are. That means if you know them but you don't know their names and you ask somebody else, it doesn't work. They have to know, the Sefer and the Edim have to know that this is his name and that is her name. And the reason is, the Beis Yosef right away, who brings this to Nemuka Yosef, explains this because the chashash that maybe they're going to change their name, change names, play around, and they'll come maybe to help another woman get a get, or etc. And the Nemuka Yosef, the way the Beis Yosef understands them, at lachatchila, you don't rely on asking after the get is written. This yediyah, this hakara has to be before the get is written. And the Beis Yosef over there points out that even according to the Nemuka Yosef, if they ask other people before the get, and those other people confirm that those are the names, then it works. That's how the Beis Yosef quotes explains the Nemuka Yosef. The Bach over there says that the Nemuka Yosef is a little bit unclear, and he explains what the Nemuka Yosef says. He says Nemuka Yosef says, Nemuka Yosef with a question. It's obvious that the Edom have to know the names of the husband and the names of the wife when the husband and the wife are not here. Otherwise you can't sign it. So what the Gemara is trying to tell you is that even when the husband and the wife are in front of you and the Eidim recognize their face and they know that these people are a couple but they don't know their names, they can't rely on other people for the names. Even though it's a milsa davida legluya, it's something which will be revealed afterwards. And milsa davida legluya, we have a klal that people don't lie on something which is going to be found out afterwards. And over here, a name is something which if somebody's going to lie, you will find out about it afterwards. Still, no, the Mukhi Yosef seems to be machmir that you cannot rely on other people, for example, a woman or a karev, to be able to confirm. Rather, the Eidim have to know these people, the names of these people. And you need kosher Eidim to testify to these, to the Sefer and to the Eidim, that these are the names of the people that are getting divorced, the husband and the wife, not only when they're not in front of us, but also when they are in front of us. That's how the Bach explains in the Mukhi Yosef. And the Bach says that the Beis Yosef himself understood in the Mukhi Yosef as such, that this has to happen even when they are here in front, even when they come both in front of us. However, he says that this in the Mukhi Yosef only writes according to the Rashbam, alei l'shitasi of the Rashbam. But in the Mukhi Yosef himself, he holds that you could rely on a isha or a karev. And like the Mukhi Yosef himself brings from the Rashba and the Ritva. That's the Bach on this first part of the Beis Yosef. Then the Beis Yosef, along with Beis Yosef, he continues and he says, there's a Rambam, and there's 5 things that we learned from the Rambam. It's in Hilchos Malva V'Loiva regarding a Hilchos Malva V'Loiva Perek Chav Daled Halacha Gimel Halacha Daled. It's also quoted in the Beis Yosef. This is also quoted in the Mitler Rebbe's Piskei Dinim. 5 things that we learn from those halachas over there. Number 1, that you need a heker whether the wife is there or not, even if she's there with the husband. Number 2, that the Sefer does not have to know it, rather only the Eidim. The Darkei Moshe right away disagrees with this in Sifkat and Beis and says that the fact that only the Eidim and not the Sefer have to know is a din that the Rambam says in Dinei Mominus. But in Dinei Gitin, you can't compare Dinei Mominus and Gitin for this specific effect, because by Gitin, by Mominus, all we care about is that the Eidim are going to confirm that what happened is true. By a get, we also have to have the writing should be Lishma, as we mentioned in the previous year. So once we said the writing has to be Lishma, and that's the main thing, so the Sefer also has to know the names of the husband and the name of the wife, because otherwise how is he going to be able to write the get Lishma? That's how his comment on the second thing that the Beis Yosef writes in the name of the Rambam. The third thing is that if a person has his name, he's muchzak in a city for 30 days, it's enough. Even if it means what's muchzak, and what's exactly 30 days, I'm not going to, it's beyond the scope of the shir, exactly what 30 days and what muchzak is, if it's 30 consecutive days, if it's 30 days and you go out of town for a day in the middle. But the idea is that if a person lives in one city and he's known at that city for that name, then that is enough. Even if there is no other proof that that is his name, rather only because of the chazakah that people know him with that name. Number 4, the Eidim also have to know the names of the fathers of the husband and the wife. Number 5, also for the name of the father of the man, it's if he's muchzak in a city 30 days, as known as Pliny ben Pliny, then that is enough that you could write the name of his father based on his chazakeh. If his Oila L'Torah is known in the city as Yosef ben Shimon, which is the classical name used in the whole Hilchos Gitin, Yosef ben Shimon, then that's enough to be able to write the name of the father based on him. The Beis Yosef continues beforehand, in the middle of the Beis Yosef, he brings the shit of the Rosh, that for recognizing the husband and the wife, you could rely on the Eid Echad, you could even rely on the Karev, you could rely on a woman. Why? Because it's a milsa davida legluye, it's something which Again, something which will be recognized and people are not going to lie on it. And the Beis Yosef mentions that this is also the Bnei Yerucham writes, that Ashba and the Ritva that are quoted in the Mukhi Yosef, the Magid Mishnah and the Mukhi Yosef. There is a Tzemach Tzedek about this, we're going to get to later on, not at this second, we're going to get to it later. Now let's go into the Mechaber. This is all introduction of the Tur and the Beis Yosef. The Mechaber writes that the Eidim have to know, the Eidim which are signed on the get, have to know, Makirim v'yoidim, have to know and have to recognize, Shezeh ploini v'ishe ploinis. This is, the Mechaber only writes Eidim, doesn't write Sefer. Because Lashitasi, the way he understood the Rambam, that we have to recognize that this is the man and this is his wife. The Ramah adds right away, just like he added in the Darkei Moshe Yeshaimrim, that also the Sefer has to know the husband, has to recognize them, has to know their names. V'chei nireli. The Chalkas Mechoykek over there adds that this is regardless of whether they come, whether the wife is there or the wife is not there. Still, even if the man and the wife both come, still the Sefer and the Eidim have to know that the name of the man and the name of the woman. That's in Sifkot and Zayin. Sifkot and Ches, the Chalkas Mechoykek right away points out, this is only L'chatchila, but B'di Eved, if the Sefer and the Eidim did not know that this is the name of the man and this is the name of the woman. Rather, they just heard it from the husband and the wife. And they didn't have any Eidos on it. But afterwards, it was Nisbarer that this is their name, then it's kosher. Same thing is also in the Beis Shmuel, in the end of Sifkot and Daled. B'di'evet kosher afilu achar achasimet. B'di'evet it's kosher if you find out even after the signing of the get. Same thing is also in the Pri Chodosh. Over here, who he brings the name, the Chalkas Mechoykek, that b'di'evet it's fine if you find out afterwards, and that's how he paskins Lamaisa. There's a book called Roiv Dogon on Even HaEzer, Hilchos Gitin, Siman Aleph Ois Ches. One of the books that are printed in the printings that it's hard to read. Those I think Turkish Kushta printings that are hard to read, but you find them on Hebrew books. One of those many books from then. He wrote there's a Sefer, and over there he goes into the discussion that according to the Bach, it seems like if they don't, the way the Bach understands the Nimukei Yosef and the way the Bach explains it, it seems like even b'di'evet, it will not work if they find out after the get was written. So you have most of them hold, so far, most of the people we mentioned hold one way, that b'di'evet it's fine, or at least, and what does b'di'evet mean? We'll soon see there's a get mekusher to the Ri Navon Sifkot and Yud Aleph. He says, not stam b'di'evet you could be matir, only if it's a mokim igun, and only if you can't get another get. Because, why is that? Because if you look at the Pri Chodosh and you look at the Chalkas Mechoykek, why do they say that b'di'evet it's fine if you only find out afterwards? Because the end of the Sif says that b'mashas sakone kaisvim, even if they're not, even if you don't have that information. So obviously it means that it is kosher even without it. However, the fact that the example it's learned from Shas Sakone, which is essentially a extreme situation. So the Mari Novoin in Get Mekusher says it only works in a Mokim Igun, that you cannot get another get, similar to a Mokim Sakana, but if you could get another get, you should write another get, simply because these people violated Takanas Chachamim, and therefore they should be penalized for it. In the Teiras Gitin, Sifkot and Tes, he explains that what does it mean by b'di'evet? How did it happen? It doesn't mean that they just wrote a get the way we understood it earlier, that they just, the husband and the wife show up in Bezdin, he says this is my name, she says this is my name, and you write a get. No, it means that there was a tvias ayin, they know this couple as a couple, but they don't know that these are their names. They know them as a couple, they see them walking on Shabbos together, and they know they're living together, they have kids, whatever it is, so they know them as a couple. But they don't know their names. So then they relied on, before they only relied on his, not like I mentioned, in the beginning they only relied on him and her saying their names, and afterwards they recognized as Tviyah sign, oh, this is the couple that we know from before, and they found out the names. Also, this is the Megaresh and the Mizgareshes, and they found out what the names are, and then the get is kosher b'di'evid. Why? The Torah's Gitin says that this hakara that is needed is not midin lishma like we understood from the Darkei Moshe, and even what the Ramah says is only chumra be'alma, and therefore it's kosher b'di'evid, but it's only b'di'evid. And he says, even if the Eidim come and they testify to Bezdin that they wrote the get without knowing, without hakara, without knowing the husband and the wife, that these are their names.
It's not within the Shema, and it's not within, why according to reading the Nabin, it says that it's only Makim?
Because Takonas Chachamim, that you need hakara. The other one says l'chatchila you need it for the Shema.
According to the other one, the Shema, it's possible.
So that's what he says. That's what the Rav Dagan says. That according to the Bach, it seems like it's a problem. Even the evidence possible. But the Torah's Gitin says that even if the Eidim come and say we wrote it without knowing anything, and then afterwards the Bezdin discovers the names of these people, and the Eidim find out the names of these people, the get is still kosher b'di'evid. Why? Because ultimately the whole din of hakara is only midrabanan, and we have no reason to be machmir so much. Now, the Ramah says that also the Sefer has to know. Right? That's the Ramah writes it here, and the Ramah writes it in Darkei Moshe. The Chalkas Mechayges Sifkat test explains why is that, like we said, because the Sefer has to hear from the husband and to be able to write Lishmoi or Lishma. Therefore, two things. First of all, he has to know the names. Second of all, more importantly, he has to know it before he starts. Before he starts, not only, but the evidence it's kosher after he starts, but after it's done. But l'chatchila, you should know it before, so you could do the proper full-fledged Lishma like it's supposed to be. The Pri Chadash on this points out that when the Beis Yosef says that you don't need that the Sefer should be only the Eidim, he says Davar Tamua, he says on the Beis Yosef, it doesn't make sense. He says, we know that there's a machlokes in Gemara, Eidei Chasima Karsi, Eidei Mesira Karsi, everybody knows it, but we'll still go through it a second. The machlokes whether a get is effectuated when the Eidei Chasima, when the through the Eidim which sign it, or through the Eidei Mesira, and the Maskana is the Eidei Mesira Karsi, which means that the Eidei Chasima are not so ma'akev. So therefore, the whole knowledge that we have about the lishma of the get comes from the Sefer. And the Sefer has to be the one that knows what's going on. How will the Sefer write lishma if, and then afterwards the Eidei Mesira are going to be the ones that will give it over, whatever the Sefer writes. How will the Sefer be able to do it lishma if he doesn't have the names if he doesn't have the names, he doesn't recognize that this is his name and this is her name before he starts? So he says maybe the only way to explain why the Beis Yosef paskins that you do not need the Sefer to know it is not that the Sefer doesn't have to know. It means the Sefer doesn't have to know independently. Rather, the Eidei Chasima, which are there anyways, they for sure have to know. And then they tell the Sefer. So Beis Yosef is telling you, the Eidei Chasima, once they know, it's enough because they're going to tell the Sefer already. And therefore he says there's no machlokes between Beis Yosef and essentially there's no machlokes between Beis Yosef and the Ramah. It's one and the same. The only difference is that the Ramah says that the Sefer has to know it, and the Beis Yosef says no, the Sefer doesn't have to know it directly from them. The Eidim is enough to to tell it to him. So the machlekes is limited to, does the sefer have to know it independently, or does the sefer have to know it directly independently, or you could hear it from the Eidim. Now, who is the Bach Paskins that the sefer has to know? The sefer and the Eidim have to know. He Paskins like the Tur. Now, whoever learned in the Yeridei, you know that Taz a lot of times disagrees with the Shver, the Bach. Over here also he doesn't leave him too much space, and he says, Punkt verkehrt. Not only the Sefer for sure doesn't have to know anything. Because what's the proof? Because in Shas Sakane, you don't need to know. Not makpid. That means that the Yediyah, the Hakara, has nothing to do with Lishma. If it would have anything to do with Lishma, then even in Shas Sakane you wouldn't be able to get away from it. More so, one aid or a woman is also kosher for this Hakara. So obviously, this Hakara is not a full Hakara that you need. The only reason for this Hakara is to prevent Harama, to prevent the trick. So therefore, when the Tur writes Eidim v'Sofer, it doesn't mean Eidim and Sofer, it means Eidim or Sofer. As long as somebody there who's independent of the couple knows that this is the name of the husband and this is the name of the wife, it already removes the option of one of them, of the husband or the wife, pulling off a trick that they're not really a couple. And that is what the Torah says, Sofer v'Eidim v'Sofer. Not only that, he says, even if somebody who's not the Sofer, not the Eidim, knows it, it's already enough. He'll come and say it. And that's enough to prevent the chashash of Arama. And the Shas Sakana, we're not chashash to the Arama. That's the reason. It has nothing to do with Lishma. And therefore, not only do you not have to have the Sofer and the Eidim, the Akpada, it could be either or even somebody minashuk. And he says, Leis man de chosh, that everybody has to know this. All three have to know it. It's a pashut, a thing that not all three have to know. That's what the Taz says. The Taz pretty much takes Leis man de chosh, that nobody requires all three to know it. That's how he understands it. The Erech Lechem, the Marikash, takes the exactly opposite approach. He says all the poskim require all three. They require the Sefer for sure to know. Why? Because you want to have it the full Lishma that the Sefer knows about it. And even though the Shulchan Aruch doesn't say that, the Erech Lechem says you still have to be makpid on it. The Get Pashut says that you don't need Yediyas HaSefer. The B'Siyah says you don't need Yediyas HaSefer, and the Taz says either or. The Get Mekusher to Navon, which I mentioned earlier, in Sifkot Nid Gimel, says that B'Di'evid you could rely on the B'Siyah if the Sefer doesn't know. If only the Eidim know, the B'Siyah and the Get Pashut. The Pischei Tshuva, Sifkot and Yud, surprisingly, only brings the Get Pashut, which says that you don't need, and the Teras Gitin, which we mentioned earlier, that says Zachon Ba'alma. Seems like the Pischei Tshuva also takes this approach that the Sefer, that the knowledge of the Sefer is not mandatory. But if you look in the Mittler Rebbe, he brings when he quotes the Rashbam in the beginning of the Sa'if, he adds over there, he rewrites the words of the Rashbam in such a way, he says, Ha-Sofer ve'ha-Eidim, he says Sofer first, Tzrichim she'akiru. Towards the end of the Sa'if, he quotes the Darkei Moshe on the B'Siyosef word for word, that also the Sofer has to know the same way as the Eidim, and he doesn't bring anybody else who holds like the B'Siyosef. So, Lav Davka, it's not a clear achra, but it seems like he is definitely noite like the Ramah, that this is something which has to be done l'chatchila. Now let's continue. Now the Mechaber continues, like we said, the same thing that we know from what he writes in Beis Yosef, that this, in the name of the Rosh, This hakara, this yediyah, this knowledge, the name of the husband, the name of the wife, could be done through a karev. That means a karev testifies, or a isha, or a echad. And the Beis Shmuel explains in short, because it is a milsa d'avida legluye, it's something which will be definitely revealed, and therefore you don't have to be stressed out about it if it's not edim kshedim. The Torah's Gitin Sifkot and Yud Aleph goes into a whole discussion about this, and then the Tzemach Tzedek completely takes him apart. And we're going to go through it now. It happens to be that Tzemach Tzedek is, for some reason which I can't remember why, it's not in your book, so you're just going to have to rely on me repeating it to you, and you can look for it afterwards. Let's start with Torah's Gitin. Torah's Gitin says, Sifkot and Yud Aleph, how is it possible that one aid helps? In Siman Kuf Mem Aleph, Sa'if Lamed Vav, when it comes to a get shlichus, a get which is sent by the husband, that means, which I mentioned to you in the past, a get shlichus means that the husband appoints a shliach to deliver the get to his wife. He does not give it to her in her hands, and he's not there at the time when the get is delivered. It could be that it's a country away, it could be that it's a half a world away. Now, as a completely, is in brackets, just to point out, the minhag is to send Gitin through the post, through the mail. The Tzemach Tzedek is very, very against it. The Sdei Chemed brings that Tzemach Tzedek. The Kav Noki also brings that Tzemach Tzedek. Therefore, he goes into a whole discussion. It's better to have a Shliach LeKabbalah rather than Shliach LeIlacha. It's unrelated to this shir, but you should just have it in the back of your mind that the Tzemach Tzedek completely does not, it makes a bunch of shilas on sending a get through mail. But let's leave that aside. We're talking about a Shliach LeIlacha. Shliach LeIlacha that brings the get to the wife. Siman Kuf Mem Aleph. Over there, the Mechaber de Ramor writes that if the Shliach LeIlacha does not know the woman, he needs to have two Eidim Kshedim which will testify that this is the woman. This is the wife of, this is her name, and this is the wife of this man. It's not enough with one. So he says, the Torah's Gitin says, why over there you need two Eidim Kshedim, and over here you get away with one that's a Karev, or a Isha, or a Echad. He says the same question was also asked by the Get Pashut and Sifkot and Yud Aleph. That also explains that the Get Pashut, not only that, but he explains that when the Ramah says that you need two Eidim, it means two Eidim Kshedim. So even more stronger, not Stam two. You need two Eidim Kshedim over there. And over here, Echad Karev, or Isha, or even Eid Echad. So Teres Gitin says, let's focus on Milsa Davida Legluya. The whole reason why we rely on the Isha and the Eid Echad or a Karev in this scenario is because Milsa Davida Legluya. Something which we know that they're not going to lie about because people are going to find out that they lied. But when does Milsa Davida Legluya happen? Only when this person is living in this town for 30 days and everybody knows his name. And therefore, all you're doing for this hakara is only confirming what everybody knows. And nobody, not a Eid Echad, not a Isha, not a Karev, are going to risk to lie and say that this is somebody else's name when they know this person is in this town. It's a Milsa Davida Legluya, they're going to know what his name is. But if it's a real hakara, to let's say testify that this is a person's wife, or when it comes to Yerusha, this is a person's brother, etc., that over there it's not a Milsa Davida Legluya, it doesn't work. Here is the exception. So therefore, when you're talking about that the get is being delivered to another city and the wife is there, and over there you don't have a Milsa Davida Legluya, over there one is not enough. You need two. And he mentions that that's what the Rivash holds. It happens to be that Rivash holds differently, and that's what the Tzemach Tzedek points out. But he brings that that's what the Rivash holds. And he says that Rivash says it is a Milsa Davida Legluya Gomor, a complete Milsa Davida Legluya, and there's a partial Milsa Davida Legluya. Milsa Davida Legluya Gomor, the Teres Gitin says, that's when you could rely on an Eid Echad, a Karev, or a Pasal. So therefore, over here, where the Hakara is not Midei is only Midei Rabbanan. Why is it only Midei Rabbanan? Because mid'oraisa, the husband is trusted to say that this is his wife. Though hakara is established by chachamim. So therefore, with that, plus, so in such a scenario, a karev or eid echad helps. And now, when the husband is in front of us, what do we need the hakara for? Not to know that this is a husband and wife, but only to know what his name is. The only hakara that we need is lahakir that this is his name. So lahakir, this is his name, is Milsa David Legluya, because he lives in this town. If he lives in this town, Milsa David Legluya, it's enough with a Eidechad, or a Karev, or a apostle, or a Isha. And therefore he says, l'chayra, even mid'oraisa that would work. For such a idea of a name, only, even mid'oraisa would work. And then he says, even for akaras ishtay, you could also say that the eid echad works. Why? Because the hakara of the isha is only midrabanan. Because minatayra, the husband is trusted to say this is his wife. Because of a chazaka, he's not going to make an aveda. Stam. But in Siman Kuf Mem Aleph, we're just talking about sending a get to another city. The husband is not there. And he can't say, this is my wife. Therefore, you don't have the mid'oraisa, you don't have the hakara over there is not just mid'rabanan, because hakara mid'rabanan is only when he's there and he says, this is my wife. And the mid'rabanan is to know the name. But over here in Kuf Mem Aleph, the hakara is mamish mid'oraisa, because you don't know if the person's wife is there. So therefore, you need to edim kshedim. So now we're going to move to the Tzemach Tzedek, which takes apart this Teiras Gitin. It's Siman, Even as a Siman Reish Pei Vav. It's mainly focused on Siman Kuf Mem Aleph, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I'll go through certain points of it which are relevant to this Siman. The story is over there. A shliach brings a get. He does not know the husband. So that's strike number one. Because the shliach is supposed to know who the husband is. Just like the Sefer and the Edom are supposed to know, you're going to learn that also shliach is also supposed to know who the husband is. It's not in this Siman, but you should know it. Definitely doesn't know who the wife is. Doesn't know that she's the wife of this person, so that's strike number two. All he knows is that there's a person in town A that told him, I am married to this woman who's living in that town. And that's her name, and this is my name. And he travels, and he says, okay, he finds the woman, he says, you're the wife? Okay, fine, here's the get. Shaila is, what could be done with such a get? The shliach doesn't know, not the husband and not the wife. So not knowing the husband, over there maybe you could rely on the karev when the get was being written. But not knowing the wife, you need two. So it starts by, the Tzemach Tzedek starts by discussing the Trumas Hadeshin. Trumas Hadeshin, Siman Reish Lamed Ches. Trumas Hadeshin says that a shliach halacha that does not recognize the woman needs two Eidim Ksherim, which will testify to him that this is the wife of Pliny ben Pliny. And the Trumas Hadeshin proves it from the Sefer HaTruma and from other ones. And the Tzemach Tzedek continues, and even though the Rosh says regarding Mamain, because the Rosh is talking about Mamain. The Beis Yosef is the one that took the Rosh and said Mamain or get for Eid Echad, Karev, or Isha. So he says, even though the Rosh says Linyan Mamain, that a Karev or Isha is enough, that only works in your Mamain, but for Shluchas HaGet, it's not going to work. That's what the Trumas Hadeshin writes. That is essentially the Teichen Hadvarim of the Trumas Hadeshin, the way Tzemach Tzedek quotes it. Tzemach Tzedek then continues and brings the Michtav Miliyahu. Michtav Miliyahu is one of the Yesodis Dikas Sfarim and Hilchos Gitin, written by Rav Eliyahu El-Fandari, Shar Vav, Seif Siman Yud Ches, that he agrees with the Trumas Hadeshin. And even more so, he brings a Svara, and he proves it from the Rishonim, that by a Shliach HaGet, even two Eidim is not enough. He has to personally know the woman. And at least two Eidim. Two Eidim is the minimum. So he's masking the Trumas Hadeshin, the Michtav Miliyahu is masking the Trumas Hadeshin, that two Eidim is enough. But he brings Svaras that even that might not be enough. And then the Tzemach Tzedek says, just like the Shliach has to know the Mizgar Eshes and Siman Kuf Mem Aleph, when he gives her the get, Shliach Lehoilacha, the one who brings it on behalf of the husband, so too he has to know who the Megadeshes. He has to know the name of the Megadash, he has to know who he is. And if not, he needs to have 2 Eidim Kshedim to testify to him who the Megadash is. Not like we thought until now that maybe you need, maybe 1 aid will be enough for the shliach. He says no, if he doesn't know who the Megadash is, doesn't know who the Megadash is, he needs 2 Eidim for the Megadash, 2 Eidim to the Megadash, and otherwise his shlichus doesn't work. That's Ois Aleph of the Tzemach Tzedek, which is a story. Ois Beis is what the crucial part that's relevant more to this Siman. Tzemach Tzedek continues in Ois Beis and says as follows: what the Beis Yosef writes in the beginning of this Siman, in Siman Kuf Chaf, that according to the Rosh, you could rely on the Eid Echad, or a Isha, or a Karev, both Le'inyan Isur and Le'inyan Mammon. He says that's how the Beis Yosef understood the Rosh. The Trumas Hadeshen clearly did not understand the Rosh that way, because the Trumas Hadeshen asks about the Rosh from the din of Shluchas. He says, how could it be by Shluchas by Shluchas by Shluchas you don't need? It says if the Trumas Hadeshen would understand that the Rosh holds that by Ksivas Aget, Eid Echad, or a Karev, or a Isha is kosher, and by Shluchas Aget you need 2 Eidim Kshedim, the Trumas Hadeshen would have asked from a din of Gitin to a din of Gitin. Why did he have to go find something in the din Imaminus from the Rosh? Could have said straight from Gitin to Gitin. So obviously, the Trumas Hadeshen took it simply that what the Rosh says about Eid Echad, Karev, or Isha, in din Imaminus does not apply at all to Gitin. The Beis Yosef understood it that way, but not the Trumas Hadeshen. He continues, the Tzemach Tzedek, not only the Rosh, not only the Trumas Hadeshen understood the Rosh that way, then the Mukhi Yosef that the Beis Yosef brings, you could also say that he also doesn't hold that the Karev or Isha works. Why? Because the Mukhi Yosef only writes it regarding Shaivar. Shaivar is a financial transaction regarding the Ksuba. It's a receipt. He doesn't mention it by a get. He explains it on the word Shaivar. By a get, the lashon of the Nemuki Yosef seems to imply that you can't rely on anybody else. So therefore, could be the Nemuki Yosef also holds that way. That a Eid Echad or a Karev or a Apostle will not help for that Karev in such a scenario. And he says, seems to me, that Tzemach Tzedek says, that Nemuki Yosef holds that Hakaras, Habal, and the Isha, by writing of the get, is the same exact din as Hakaras Isha by Shluchas Haget in Siman Kuf Mem Aleph. The Michtav Melio also understood the Nemuki Yosef that way, that he does not make this differentiation. The Beis Yosef, even though he explains the Nemuki Yosef this way in Siman Kuf Chaf, when it comes to Siman Kuf Chaf Tes, which we're not going to get into now, also puts the whole Nemuki Yosef in Tzarich. So it makes more sense to put the Nemuki Yosef that he does not make the differentiation, that Sai by Ksivas Haget and Sai by Shluchas Haget, you need both. You need 2 Eidim Kshedim and not enough for the Eid Echad or a Karev or Apostle. Yeah, but the Michtav Melio makes his own differentiation. He says, if the husband and the wife are here in front of us in Bezdin to do the get, then we rely on the Eid Echad or a Karev. That's how he paskins the Michtav Melio. But when they're not in front of us, that's when you need 2 Eidim Kshedim. That's how the Michtav Melio takes paskins regarding this thing. So you don't need both. All you need is, when they're not in front of us, that's when they are in front of us, that's when it's enough Eid Echad or a Karev or a Isha. But when they're not in front of us, you need 2. That's how the Michtav Melio seems to understand to paskin the way according to Mukhi Yosef. Michtav Melio then retracts his statement and is mekel and says no, but the Maaseh, because it's mashma from the Gemara, there's a difference between Shluchas and Ksivas Haget, and it's mashma from the Gemara, but Ksivas Haget is less strict than by Shluchas. Therefore, by Ksivas Haget, it's enough if you have a Eid Echad or a Karev or a Isha. The Gemara does not mention that you need 2 Eidim Kshedim for the Hakare for ksivas aget, and therefore the Michtav Eliyahu says, although from the Nimuki Yosef you could make this differentiation, you might need to make this differentiation according to the Trumas Hadeshin. Also you might do this differentiation. Ultimately the Gemara does not say so, the Shulchan Aruch does not paskin so, and therefore the Maisa regarding Ksivas Aget, the Michtav Eliyahu paskins like the Shulchan Aruch, that a get has, that for writing a get, he doesn't make any differentiations. He is here, he's not here. That's how Tzemach Tzedek understands him. It's enough a dechad or a karev or a isha. Now comes the Tzemach Tzedek and brings the Teres Gitin, which we already know about. The Teres Gitin is mechadesh that milsa David Ligluye by Hakoras, by the Hakara of their names, only applies when the person is living in the city and his name is Muchzak over there, and he has a chazak of 30 days, and that's his name, and therefore there's a milsa David Legluy. They're not going to lie. But if it's a different kind of hakara that's not specific to just knowing the name for somebody who's living in the city for 30 days, it won't work. Why is that? Because the Teres Gitin, like we said, it says that the hakara that you need is not a specific hakara that this is his wife. It's only hakara about names. Hakara about names. That's why it's enough. That's his thing. But by shliach lehoilacha, it's not enough to just have a milsa David legluye. You also have to know that this is his wife. For that, you need two edim. The Tzemach Tzedek puts on the Teres Gitin the definition that his words are tmuhim me'oid. Why is that? Because if you look in the Teres Gitin, what's the reason why he says that by a shliach you need two edim, and by ksivas aget it's enough milsa David legluye? He says because Amo they would write shem dira in the get, which he didn't get to yet. They would write not only the place where the husband and the wife are standing, but also the place where they come from. And the get, which I mentioned to you in the beginning, before we start learning Chaz Gitin, which is on the WhatsApp group, is over there. It says the place where this get is being done. Then it says the husband is from this and this city, and the wife is from this and this city. The get was in Yerushalayim, and both of them are from Iraq, and there were two different cities over there. And it says the Mokim Dira. So therefore, over there, since we don't write Mokim Dira anymore, so therefore we don't have a siman and a get to know if this wife is taka the wife of the husband, because it doesn't say where she lives. Therefore we need two proper edim, and there's no more milsa David legluye. So Tzemach Tzedek asked him a simple question: this din that you need two edim by shlichus aget is a din which was in the time of the Gemara, after the times of the Gemara. And by then they still wrote Shem Dira. So first question is, this chiluk doesn't make any sense. That has to do with Shem Dira, because Shem Dira was written then and we still were makpid on it. More so, the Teres Gitin tries to say that Teres Gitin was mechadash another point. That by shlichus aget, not only does the shliach have to know according to two edim, kshedim, that this is the name of the husband, and this is the name of the wife, and this is the wife of this person, but even the sefer and the edim also have to know that this is the name, that this is the husband and this is the wife. That's Teres Gitin writes. Tzemach Tzedek says that's not mentioned in Gemara. Completely. This doesn't, not in Shulchan Aruch. Sorry, not Gemara. Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch doesn't mention anywhere that by shlichus you need to have two edim to tell the sefer and the edim that this is the wife of Flame and Pliny. When it comes to writing a get, all you have to have is a knowledge of the name of the husband and the name of the wife, the names. And there's no difference whether it is a husband, whether it's a get shlichus or it's not a get shlichus. So where does the Teres Gitin get such an idea from? Siman Kuf Malaf only says the shliach has to know. It doesn't say the sefer and the edim have to know. In Siman Kuf Chaf, it says the sefer and the edim have to know the names. There's no place in Shulchan Aruch that says that you have to, that the shliach, that when a get shliach is the sefer and the edim have to know everything from the two edim. Not only that, if you look in the Michtav Eliyahu, it's clear for Kert. Hakara, which comes to Sefer and Edom, is very clear. Mechtav Yo clearly explains it, that it has nothing to do, that there's no difference regardless of which way the get is written, even the get shlichus. And all that has to be known, like I mentioned, is the name of the husband and the name of the wife, that this is this guy's name, and that is her name. Even if she's not in front of us, you don't need more than that. So therefore, the only teretz you could say that maybe by a get shlichus, the shliach, why does a shliach have to know that they're married to each other when the Sefer and the Edom don't know? It's akasha. Why does a shliach have to know it? Because now we said by the only you have to know the name, that the shliach only by the time of the writing of the get only has to know the names. And the Sefer and the Edom only have to know. The Sefer and the Edom only have to know the names. Only the shliach has to know that this is his wife. Why is it specifically for him? Tzach says maybe it's because the shliach is the one who concludes the act of gerushin on behalf of the husband, so he needs a stronger edus, or because he is standing as a shliach shluchah shlodim kemoisai instead of the husband, standing instead of the husband, and therefore he has to have a complete knowledge of the wife, because he's acting like the husband, so he has to give her a get. So he has to have the same knowledge as the husband has. This is the wife. So for that, he needs a dear Gmura, Edus Gmura. It's not enough to have a half Edus. But otherwise, why should the Sefer and the Edom have to have a full idea? For them all, it's enough to have the names. So that's the second question of Teres Gitin. So Tzemach Tzedek says, Taka, you could say that maybe if they come from a different city, to be Masada get, needed that the Sefer and the Edom have to recognize, have to know, have to have a hakara that this is his wife. You could say that, not only the names. And maybe the reason why in the times of the Gemara you only had to know the names and you didn't have to know that this is his wife is simply because they wrote Mokim Dira. Since they wrote Mokim Dira, so therefore there was a siman on the get that this is the wife and that is the husband. That this is the wife of plain and plain. But now that you don't write Mokim Dira, maybe if a person comes, if the husband and the wife come from out of town and there is no yediyah to them what the name is, maybe you do have to know that this is a husband and the wife. That it has to have, in addition to have a hakara of the names, you also have to have a yediyah that they're married. But Tzemach Tzedek himself doesn't pass like that. He continues at length to be pairech the Teres Gitin in different in different angles. For example, again, he's pairech the concept that Akaras Shemus is a milsa David Legluya only for the husband, not for the wife. He says that he doesn't understand why the Teres Gitin brings a proof from the Rivash. If you look in the Rivash, he says you'll see it. The Rivash says Punkt Verkehrt. The Rivash says that Yahakara, that this is the brother. For that, the Eid Echad or Akarv do work, and that is considered a milsa David Legluya. And the Teres Gitin says that Akarv of a brother is not milsa David Legluya. So Tzemach Tzedek says, after this question, Tzemach Tzedek says, "V'zeh shoiver lekol divrei haTeres Gitin l'chiluk shalai." By this one, the Teres Gitin is over. So he says, so the maskana Tzemach Tzedek is that if the husband is far away, he's not there at the time of the writing of the get, then Taka, you have a svara to say that even for Hakaras Hashemis, you would have a svara to say that even for the Hakara of the names, one aid is not Neman. Why? Because the husband is not here, so it's not a Vidul Gluya. But ultimately, the Shulchan Aruch clearly writes that it does work, Hakara of Eid Echad. And therefore, Tzemach Tzedek says, the Tzemach Tzedek leaves it as Tzarechiyun. So Shulchan Aruch holds that way and says Tzarechiyun. Tzemach Tzedek then continues at length. Now I want to point out two very, very small chuvas in the Tzemach Tzedek, which are actually in your book, so you don't have to go get it. Page 337, Siman Shin Pei and Shin Pei Aleph. I'm going to start with Siman Shin Pei Aleph. Over there, it's just one paragraph, the whole chuvah. There was a get which was sent, and the shliach did not recognize the woman. And this is actually this chuvah seems like the way Tzemach Tzedek paskind. Over there, it ends in Tzarechiyun, very machmer. Over here, Tzemach Tzedek takes a complete opposite approach. There's a get which was sent, the shliach did not recognize the woman, did not have hakara, this is the wife of plain and plain, only was the eid echad. And asked the Tzemach Tzedek what to do about it. Tzemach Tzedek says, if you, means the Rav who asked the question, does not want to rely on one aid lechatchila for such a yediyah, and you want to be machmer, you could only be machmer if the get was already given, and after the get was given, there's no way of finding out through eidim that this is the woman who the husband divorced. But if you do have a way to find out, and you could be mevarer according to two eidim, that this is the name of the megaresh, and this is the name of the mizgareshes. So even though at the time of the nesina the shliach did not know that, you still could be mekel. The chiddush of the Tzemach Tzedek, and the Tzemach Tzedek says why? Based on the Chalkas Mechayek here in Siman Kuf Chav. Here in Siman Kuf Chav, the Chalkas Mechayek writes that if the shliach and the sofer and the eidim, if the sofer and the eidim did not know before the writing of the get that this is the name of the husband, this is the name of the wife, they only found out after the husband, after the get was written, the get is kosher b'di'evid, that will also apply to a shliach. If the shliach gave a get and he did not have the idea that he has to know this is the mizgareshes, and afterwards he finds out it's still kosher b'di'evid based on this chalkas mechaykek. And then he continues and he says, so what's the questions that you have to ask? He says, she's barer shmoi v'sheyesh lo isha b'shem kach v'kach. So you have to know, because it's a shliach, he has to know that this is the name of the husband. He has to know that this man has a wife. He's married, and she's the wife of this guy, and this is her name. And if you look in Siman Shin Pei, also same idea. Seems like it's Tzemach Tzedek says that you need two eidim is only lechatchila by a shlichus, which are complete opposite of what's written in Siman Reish Pei Vav. L'maisa, I don't know. This is an extreme case that Tzemach Tzedek is mekel, but usually it seems like having the two eidim when it comes to shlichus, the Mechaber writes it, the Ramah writes it pretty clearly. Let's go back to Shulchan Aruch. So one of the things that we mentioned is that you could do the hakara through eid echad, through a karev, or through a isha. The Torah's Gitin discusses this in Sifkat and Yud Gimel, and he brings two stories. These two stories are also mentioned in the Pischei Tshuva Sifkat and Yud Aleph. He only brings the stories. What were these stories? There was one person who appointed a sofer, an eidim, and a shliach, and there was group amnesia. All four of these people forgot everything. The sofer forgot the husband's name and the wife's name. The eidim forgot the husband's name and the wife's name. The shliach forgot the husband's name and the wife's name. They were appointed, they forgot everything. What happened afterwards? They found in the notebook of the sofer the names. And there were those, the Torah's Gitin says, there were some Rabbanim, and the new Torah's Gitin, in the bottom, it tries to find which else the Tshuvas matches up to. There were some Rabbanim, and the Torah's Gitin says, it made a mistake to be matir. And why would they make a mistake to be matir? Because they thought that being that this is Medina Eidos, and Eidos, if you could remind yourself from the Ksav, it's enough, Mepiksavam. So he says, that's what they thought, it's good. And Torah's Gitin says, no, it's not good, because over here it's not Medina Eidos, the Hakara is something else. The Hakara over here is a din midrabanan, because midiraisa the husband is trusted. This Hakara is only midrabanan, and the din of this Hakara is for the purpose, the reason why you rely on the Eid Echad is because of Milsa David L'Gluya. And therefore you could be makabel even from other people. But over here, you don't have a Milsa David L'Gluya because you have no other way of proving it other than the Ksav. So by a Milsa David L'Gluya means that you could go around in the street and ask people and you'll discover that that's the name. But over here, the only proof that exists is a paper. So it's not a Milsa David L'Gluya from a piece of paper. So therefore it doesn't work. Not only that, if it would only be, the idea would only be based on his words, then this Hakara min Aksav also wouldn't help. because that only works with the Elaisa, this idea. That's the first story. Second story that he brings is, a husband wrote in his handwriting, was Miman, a shliach, a Sefer, and Eidim, and a shliach to give a get. Kisvu Tenu, which we're not up to, which we didn't fully learn yet. And the Eidim which received it, and the Sefer, did not recognize the Ksav. Did not recognize the handwriting of this husband. But there was an Eid Echad which recognizes the handwriting of this husband. And there were those that felt, the גיטין says, that paskin that it's kosher. Why would it be kosher? Because it's for this, maybe it's only mitzvah hakara, it's not so strict. And he says, no, it's also a mistake. Because it says hakara only helps when it's milsa david l'gluya. Let's tell us גיטין l'shitase. Hakara only works with the Eid Echad, only when it's milsa david l'gluya. And only when the person is living in the city for 30 days. And not stam, his handwriting. So both of these cases is you can't rely on it, and you need actual hakara, and otherwise it would not work, because there's no milsa david l'gluya through a piece of paper or through a eid echad confirming the handwriting. Now I'm going to go a little bit into some. There's an interesting pischei tshuva sifkat in Yud Beis. It brings them a beis meir. There was a couple which seemed to have been homeless. It says that they were drengzig in the country. And they agreed they want to get divorced. They showed up in Bezdin one day. And she brings a ksuba that has her name, her father's name, right? The husband's name. And the shaila is if you could rely on it or not. And it says the ksuba was not mekuyim. That means the chsimis were not mekuyim on the ksuba. And he seems first to imply, the beis meir, that if the chsimis were mekuyim, there was a place to say that the shtar has some validity like a hakara. Why? Because the husband and the wife is in front of us. Now, they're both here. And maybe that would help even if it's not mekuyim. But he says, no, punkt verkehrt, it doesn't work. This shtar ksuba is her document. She's the one that's pulling it out. It's a proof from her. It's the same as if she would have said it. And if she says it, it would be stronger than a piece of paper. But we don't trust her when she says it, so we don't trust a piece of paper when she brings it, even if it's mekuyim. And therefore the beis meir says, if you're writing a get for people that you don't know, guests that are coming into town, a ksuba will not help if it's not mekuyim. And even if it's mekuyim, צריך, even if it's going to help. And therefore, if they want to get divorced, and there's a couple which wants to get divorced and they're just roaming around, the only way they can get divorced is they settle in the city where the get is going to be written for 30 days. Then their names are going to be muchzak, and then they could get divorced. Comes a pischei tshuva and says, I don't understand this. How do you know she's an eishes ish? The whole idea that she's an eishes ish is based on her coming and telling you that she's married. You didn't know beforehand. There's no cheskas eishes ish. She's not living in the city. She comes and she tells you, I'm married to this and this guy, and I want to get divorced from him. And this is his name, this is my name. You could trust her for that. And the pischei tshuva leaves it in צריך and doesn't pass him one way or the other. That's that story. Now the Ramah continues that you have to, what hakara do you have to have? You have to have the name of the husband, the name of the wife, and the name of their fathers. And if they are muchzik in the city for 30 days, we're no longer chayshish. And then the Ramah says that the name of the father, kaisvin al pi atzmoi. You write based on the husband telling it to you. And the Beis Shmuel Sifkat Nevav right away says the fact that Ramah puts this at the end of the sentence separately about Shem Aviv, it's mashma that you could write Shem Aviv based on the son, even if he was not muchzik 30 days in town. Forget about if it's not muchzik with his father's name. Even if he wasn't muchzik in town 30 days, you still could, and you need Eidim for him, you still could rely on him for his father's name. Chalkas Mechakas Sifkat Yud says the same thing. Chakis Mechakik says that Rama himself says that the Mokar for this is Beis Yosef. But the Beis Yosef says that you do need 30 days, even for the father's name. That means you have to be Muchzik 30 days, Pliny ben Pliny. And without the Chazakah 30 days on his name, ben his father's name, even if he's Muchzik 30 days only for his name, it's not enough. And he says, the Darkei Moshe also says that. So I don't understand what it is. So he says, no, but the Bepoil, the Beis Yosef writes that Bepoil, know how good that you write Shem Aviv based on him, and that's why L'chayra, that's why the Rama also over here wrote it in that way, that Koisvim, that you write the name without saying that it has to be Muchzak. Is a husband trusted to say Shver's name? So you look in the Pesach Tshuva Sifkat and Gimel, based on the Get Pashut Sifkat and Yutches, in the name of the Re'am, that a husband is trusted to say what his Shver's name is, even if the husband is going off, is left the fold. But the Pesach Tshuva says that the same Get Pashut and Siman Kuf Chav Tes, because this is Get Pashut, this Siman Kuf Chav Sifkat and Yutches. But if you look in Get Pashut Siman Kuf Chav Tes, Sifkat and Mem Gimel, over there he says that a husband who left the fold of Judaism is not a suffix if he's trusted or not. And it's based on the Maram Lublin. And therefore in Kuf Chav Tes he says you should write 2 גיטין. 1 get, just the name of the husband and just the name of the wife. And 1 get, then based on the husband, his father's name and the Shver's name. And the Pesach Tshuva, that's what the Get Pashut writes. And Pesach Tshuva brings the Teres גיטין. The Teres גיטין says that when do you trust a husband to say his Shver's name is only when he's here and his wife is here. And we know that this is his wife. And all he's coming to tell us, we know his name, we know they're married, we know everything. And all he's coming and telling us is his father's name and his Shver's name. Why? Because then we're not choishesh that he's going to specifically make trouble. But if we don't know that this is his wife, and he's coming and he's saying, this is my wife, and we have to believe him that he says, this is my wife, and he says, this is my Shver's name, and we have to believe him, then the Edom have to know from a different source the name of his father and the name of his Shver. The Pesach Tshuva spends a lengthy bunch of lines taking apart this Teres גיטין, and he says that if there's no other couple with the same name and the same father's name, that means there's no 2 Yosef ben Shimons, the same couples with the same names, then you could always write the name of his father according to him. And only if there's another couple with the same names, that's when you have to have Eidos to confirm that this is Taka the husband and this is Taka the wife. Happens to be in the Kav Naki in Seder Getrishin Siman Yutches Sifkat Ein Beis towards the end. He brings the Teres גיטין, and right after he brings the Teres גיטין, he says that the Maramri, who wrote the Seder Aget, which the Kav Naki is based on, has a biur. The way the Kav Naki is a biur on the Seder Aget of the Maramri. The Maramri himself wrote a biur on his own Seder Aget called Birkas Hamayim. So the Seder Getrishin of the Maramri Ois Yutches. So on that, the Kav Naki in Sifkat Ein Beis says that the Birkas Hamayim of the Maramri says after he brings the Teres גיטין, which makes his differentiation, he says no, but the Maramri in his biur writes that you write his name and her name based on his father's name and her father's name based on him and her. That's how he paskins. So how is this done on a practical level? There's a very interesting book, which I couldn't find a copy for Kaila, but it's in Netzach HaChacham. It's called Gufay Shel Get, written by Harav Doiv Burstein from Haifa, from Tel Aviv, sorry. Av Bezdin for גיטין in Tel Aviv. And he writes, it's a very easy to read guide for the get, and he has on the bottom, he has Maramekaimis and Pilpulim, but the top is written, we'll call it Dummy's Guide to a Get. So he actually lists 12 questions that you ask. It's practical, like sometimes you don't have to think too hard. A guy comes, you have to ask the Eidim, right? Because if they know, the Eidim know, they know. But if you start having to do research, what do you ask them? So the first question is, you ask the Eid, do you know these people? He's going to say yes. What kind of relationship is between these two people? So now, if the Eid says, this is a husband and this is a wife, they're married to each other, say, okay, now you can continue the questions. If he says it's a brother and sister, you say goodbye, right? You're done. The Chakira Dish is over. So then he says, they're husband and wife. He says, okay, so how do you know they're husband and wife? And he says, okay, now how long do you know them for as a husband and wife? Why do you have to ask this question? Simply because you have to know if you have the 30 days or not. Do you know that they're Jewish? Then you start asking, do you know what's the name of the husband? Does he have any other names? What's his father's name? Is he a Kohen? Is he a Levi? Is his father his real father? Maybe he's adopted. And then the same 11 questions you repeat about the wife. Not all the 11 questions, the last few questions, the name, etc. You ask the same thing about the wife. And he brings over here from the Chidushei Anshe Shem to Rav Shlomo Kluger in Siman Kuf Hey, that if the Eid Echod says one thing, and he contradicts the Eidim say one thing, and they contradict the husband, or they contradict the wife, you trust the Eidim, not the husband and the wife. He brings a very, very interesting thing. Now we mentioned in the as a quick introduction, we mentioned the Pischei Tshuva, you can't rely on Eksuba, unless it's Mekuyim. This Gufa Shel Get brings something very interesting over here. He doesn't bring without a marker. Well, he's good enough of a marker. In Ois Lametes and Perek Aleph and Gufa Shel Get. Venirali, the kol sheken sheyesh lismech b'kehai gavna al Hashem shebeteudas hazihui betziruf tmuna. You could rely on government-issued ID which has a picture on it. V'cheinirali, another thing, Ois Mem, shimroyim. If you see shamismachim shebiyodam, that the documents that they bring, shebohem moifim hashemos, that the names that they bring you the documents, the ID, yatsu meizem moises memshaltim v'chadoime. They didn't make their own ID, but it came from an official government agency. Dinam ki'ilu yoitzim lo mitachas yadayim. It's not like the ksuba that we mentioned. It's bichlal not considered as if they brought the document. They happened to hold the document which was issued by somebody else, but it's not considered yoitzim mitachas yadayim. But you have to start asking questions if it's reliable or not. Today, when you want to prove that somebody's a husband and a wife and they have ID, you could also use the marriage certificate. And then he says, if you only have enough information from the documents, only part of the information that you need, maybe only the basic names, but you have the basic information, this is the husband, this is the wife, this is his name, this is her name, then it's already enough that you could rely on them for the nicknames and for everything else around it. It means once you have the base idea that this is him and this is her, and it comes from government documents and that they're married, then you could go weiter for the rest of it, even from aid or from documents, you go for the rest of it, that this is already the rest of the information, they are already trusted. With that we conclude this shiur.